Hello there, welcome to another episode of World of Warplanes with Ungainly Titan. I am beginning to learn a little bit more about the game, but I still don't understand the deeper complexities of it. Couple of things that I've noticed. I think, as far as I can tell, these games were played in the evening. Previous games that I showed, I played in the morning, and as far as I can tell, they were more or less very heavily dominated by bots. These games were played around between 10 and 11 at night, and they're still very heavily dominated by bots. And quick peruse of the forums suggests that the server populations are extremely low, and in most games you're going to be playing against bots. Now, I have seen people complaining on the forums that the game is still very buggy. I don't know if that's the case, because I have experienced no bugs or glitches in, I suppose, 5 to 10 hours of play total on World of Warplanes. Just haven't noticed it. I've been playing at low tier, well, I've been playing tier 1 aircraft, and I haven't even played them all. I'm starting to experiment with consumables and mountable equipment and stuff like that, but I haven't actually noticed any bugs. And I do think that Wargaming actually have a pretty decent game here. I'm also absolutely still astounded they're not putting this thing up on the console, because it just strikes me as a perfect console game for somebody who has 15 minutes or so to spare and nothing, wants to do something quick. That is multi-user gameplay, and it is a lot of fun. And because I think it's even a lot of fun with the bots. I mean, I don't think at my level of play anywhere that you'd notice the absence or presence of humans. However, I do think Wargaming have a problem in terms of communicating the deeper complexities of the games that they make, and I think this is a universal problem. It's not just World of Warplanes, it's World of Tanks, it's World of Warships. Another game that I've jumped into, tried, and have no real idea what I'm doing. I'm beginning to think that World of Tanks is probably the simplest game in terms of objectives and overall how to win strategy than any of the other World of Wargaming games, because it's pretty obvious. You go in, you drive, if you successfully cap out, you've won. If you kill all the enemy tanks, you've won. And you will realise, if you play the game for any period of time and you have any brain at all, that capping out is almost impossible, because if there's any substantial amount of enemy tanks alive. You can cap out if there are very few enemy tanks alive and you happen to make it to the cap circle late in the game. But if you make it to the cap circle early in the game, the cap circles are almost invariably indefensible. There's no place to hide. And generally, as soon as somebody arrives, your best bet is to run away as soon as they get within detection range, and seek cover immediately, or even if beforehand, because you're not going to, you're not going to survive a gunfight with somebody who is attacking the cap circle, because generally they'll have cover unless they're in a very desperate and they've mistimed it, so they're arriving in at the very, very last seconds, in which case they might not have time to aim properly and stuff like that, and you might actually survive the shot. But generally, if they have time and there's a reasonable amount of time left on the cap, they will be able to pick their spot, approach from cover and shoot you in the cap circle. But in this one you have objectives on the map, so you have garrisons, you have command centres, you have airfields, you have, I think, mines or something. There's something else as well. And they're worth different levels of points if you capture them. And I'm not even sure how do you capture them. As far as I know, just simply clearing the airplanes over the skies around them is not sufficient. There are also stuff on the ground that has to be blown up. And I don't even recognise all the stuff on the ground, or even know how to recognise all the stuff on the ground yet. I'm beginning to be able to recognise gun emplacements. But there are other things that you can blow up that help in the capture of a resource point, capture point, that are as important, or possibly even more important than the gun emplacements. What do they look like from the air? I don't know. I kind of recognise them when they're blown up, because you can see the fires burning in them. But I personally am familiar with, and there's no kind of clear iconography in the game to tell you this. You have to go and look it up. I really think they need to put more effort into tutorials and stuff like that to teach people a lot of the subtleties and complexities of the games they produce. And they would have probably much higher player retention. Now, I suppose they don't care to a certain extent because they've gotten very high player retention out of World of Tanks in particular, without putting in that kind of investment. But in this game, it's not at all obvious. And you do have to find out and go and research. And even in World of Tanks, you have to go and research. And to a certain extent, you have to do it in World of Warships, even though World of Warships is a bit more obvious in the sense that you sink all the warships, you'll probably win. Although that's probably not a trivial task. But there's also issues involving capture points, because there's multiple capture points in World of Warships. And I think there are competing capture totals. So it's not just who has them currently captured, but how many capture point totals have the various sides built up over time. And whoever has the biggest number could potentially win the game, even if they've only one surviving warship hidden away in a corner. That is my somewhat limited understanding, and I think something similar applies in this game. That if you have captured enough capture points in the very late game, your best bet to win the game if you're totally outnumbered is to run away and hide, and don't let the enemy planes find you, because as long as you're in the air, that accumulated total capture points might be sufficient to actually win the game. So the enemy could very well lose, despite finish up with sort of total air supremacy at the very end of the game when the squall line comes in. It's more complicated than it looks, that's all I can say. However, it is still shooting down enemy aircraft. It is quite a lot of fun. And we can pick up the subtleties as we go along, and probably eventually as we'll move up through the tiers, because you get specialized aircraft as you move up through the tiers as well. So you have different kinds of bombers and ground attack aircraft and air supremacy fighters. The air supremacy fighters are probably the simplest type of aircraft to play, because their role is pretty obvious: to shoot down enemy aircraft. The others, then, you have to know what to do and when to do it. And I'd say when timing and such like is very important then in the use of ground attack aircraft or bombers. There are numbers popping up there like 50% of resources and stuff like that, and I have no idea what they mean. Seems like a good thing, but again, what does it mean? I have watched a couple of videos since I played this game that suggest certain tactics as well that are worthwhile pursuing, and I must sort of try it out and see what I can remember. One of the things that I'm having trouble with is just remembering the keyboard layout and keeping my hand on the keyboard, sort of knowing where the relative key positions and stuff like that. Partly because I don't have a lot of experience in playing computer games. A lot of my gaming over the last 10 years has been done on the Xbox. And when I have played computer games, it's been mostly games like Civilization 4, 5 and 6. Well, 6 more recently. But Civilization 4 and 5 and games of that ilk, the Alpha Centauri game, and those turn-based strategic build up your own civilization, build resource management type games, and they of course don't require really to memorize keyboard layouts. The other things that I've been playing a little bit would be role-playing games like Neverwinter Nights, which again didn't really require you to memorize your keyboard layout that much, because it was really point and click. You pointed at the enemy and the game took care of the rest. The only thing you were doing after that was spell selection, and you do that with the mouse, or you could do it with the mouse. You could have it set up in toolbars as well and do it with the keyboard, but it was just as easy to do it with the mouse. Dungeons & Dragons Online did place more of an emphasis on remembering your keyboard layout, and when I was playing that regularly, I actually was pretty good at keeping my keyboard layout in order. But it occurs to me that this is actually these recent attempts at World of Warships, World of Warplanes, some earlier attempts last year on World of Tanks on the PC, which I didn't play very much of, are actually my first ever playing shooter games with keyboard and mouse. And I realise that may cause a reaction on many viewers saying, what do you mean? You played games like Quake and stuff in the past? What did you play them with? Well, actually I played Quake in those games. Quake, Doom, Half-Life, first Half-Life, and Duke Nukem 3D, and possibly some others that I've forgotten, with a joysticks, because back in those days the ball mouse was so unreliable that you wouldn't use it for a shooter game. It just wasn't precise enough. And for those people that are too young to remember ball and mice, that means basically anyone born after 1999, there was the old way that computer mice were controlled. There was a ball the size of a ping pong ball inside the mouse that rolled against rotating bars that gave the mouse feedback as to its position, its relative change of position. And these got filled up with crud, hair, crumbs, various bits of stuff, dust, whatever that was on the table, and they'd block up and with lint and all kinds of stuff, and then you had to go and clean them. But it meant the mouse blocked up a lot and wouldn't rotate, and you could move the mouse quite long distances without the ball actually travelling any at all. And your cursor then would stick, and you'd have to clean the mouse. So a lot of people in shooters in those days used to use joysticks, or later on I think some people did use gaming trackballs. It was but the gaming trackballs didn't really take off because the optical mouse came in around the same time, and the optical mice were much superior, and you had much greater precision, even than joysticks. So people switched to the optical mouse, and it became the de rigueur device for gamers. Just looking at the scores there, as far as I can make out, people with proper names that look like they come out of a naming dictionary are probably the bots, my guess is, and the people with the weird looking names are probably the players. Don't hold me to that assessment, I'm only guessing, but I'm sure there's some way of finding out. I have no idea how I'd go about doing it. Well, I probably will find out at some stage, but it's not a big deal. But so far, yeah, I think it's a game with a lot of potential, and it's a pity that it is got such a low population, but it's also a pity that Wargaming just don't make a better effort, I think, at teaching people the complexities of the games that they're making. They're making some fine games with a lot of complexity, a lot of hidden depth in them. But that's the problem with it. It is hidden, and I think the majority of the player base are completely unaware of the deeper game. It's definitely my experience at 4 years of World of Tanks, and I've played a lot of World of Tanks, that majority of the player base have no real idea what they're doing. And I have no idea what the situation is in World of Warships, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's very different, and they're simply not playing World of Warplanes. Or very few people, actual people, are playing World of Warplanes, because now I've had a couple of sessions, but a couple of the morning sessions, and one each session at night, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of people playing. I must try it a bit more often and at different times to see if there's a noticeable difference between bots and players, and if there's an optimal time to play it against real people as distinct from bots. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and a like. It really helps the channel out. And if you have not already done so, hit that subscribe button and the bell for notifications. Bye for now, and I'll catch you all again soon.